Just what would you be willing to give up to live the American dream? No one gets out alive. I'm a little bit late to this one. I've put my hands up to that. So I just seen this was sitting top 10 on Netflix and I had to check it out. The photo for it and the poster did hook me because I didn't have a clue what I was going to be getting out of this one. So we're following Amber in it, and the movie's telling a story around the American dream and one girl attempting to get that. Amber is an undocumented immigrant, moved over to the States, and you see that she is struggling to get a foothold in America. You know, she doesn't have any documentation. She doesn't have a great job. She's working out of like a textiles factory, one of those places that just looks like it's only cash in hand with a shady boss. And she doesn't have any friends. And as for her family, the only other family in this is her second cousin, who isn't even aware that she's not documented, so clearly they're not very close either. And whilst I could say this film was paced really well, it also changes the tone up very dramatically in that final act. You know, it doesn't feel like we're getting led into it. It just smacks you over the head and you just need to deal with it and pick up the pieces. So for the majority of this movie within Act 1 and 2, she's over in the States looking to get her foothold. She's living in like a boarding house, so it's like for short-term stays for girls only, and this is where most of the movie takes place. It's a creepy boarding house, so you know you've got locked doors, you've got off-area limits, you've got the landlord who just seems a little bit sketchy. I appreciate in here how he was nice enough. I actually wrote down, I take notes when I'm going through the movies, and I actually wrote he was a good guy in it because he didn't have that unnecessarily sinisterness to him. He just looked like he couldn't be fucked, which you don't blame him for. I imagine he has to deal with a lot of shit in this boarding house with all of these young people coming here who are struggling themselves, probably just fucking the place up in their own way or making his life difficult. So her getting her ID takes up quite a big portion at the start of this movie when it's set in the scene. You know, she's got someone that she's working with who's going to help her out. She wants to get it specifically from where her mum was from in the States. Was from. That's a key thing. Within the house, she's got like visions of the past and she's seeing ghosts and she's finding odd clues about the house as well. Things that just need a little bit of an explanation as to why they got that way. But in her position, she can't really be asking too many questions. She just needs to go with the flow. And this is why the film really hits you over the head in Act 3, because for the first two acts, there's a lot of build up and a lot of mystery involved around this boarding house. You know, a lot of time is spent with her trying to get her documentation or with her trying to understand this boarding house a little bit better, which is fine. They paced that really well and I was intrigued throughout this whole movie. Then it does something interesting, which I'm not going to spoil here. But for the third act, it gets dark. Like, there's some violence in this movie. That's all in the third act. And when it does violence, I am glad that they've kept it and used it sparingly at this point, because every part of it is really well done and you fucking feel some of it that happens. Like, it's some of it's brutal in the best of ways. As for her, and the message of this story is all about sacrifice. It's all about asking, how far are you willing to go to get what you want and live your dreams? And I'm not going to tread on spoiler territory here, but the supernatural quality to this movie and how it was addressing the question that was being asked through Amber's story and what Amber's struggles were, I thought came together really nicely in here. Don't get me wrong, I had to sit back for a minute and really just think about what it meant, how it fit together, and also what was real. If you've seen it, you'll know what I mean by that. She is a good person, she is morally straight, but that gets called into question in the final act, and it does it in quite a mature way. Whilst it's bringing in the supernatural at the same time, it's now throwing this question at you and making you understand the characters a little more, making you understand the landlord a little bit more, as well as Amber's past, which is peppercorned through the movie with various throwaway lines or pieces of conversation or dialogue with her second cousin, her nearest family, now all comes together to make you as an audience member really ask yourself, what would you be willing to give up, or would you do what she does? Not are you strong enough to do it, but just would you? And I didn't see that one coming. The first two acts were paced really well for them. The third act was paced really well, but it's just the fact that the third act comes out of fucking nowhere. And the CG in this movie, of course there's probably CG throughout it, but if you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. What she's up against and the secret of this hotel was incredible to look at. I thought it was phenomenal. I have never seen anything like that before, and I thought it was really creepy. Definitely had horror coursing through its veins, and most importantly, it was so unique, which I don't really seem to see too often. You know, when you get a creature, because there's so many of them, you can clearly see where they've taken from. You know, maybe they're inspired by, or maybe they've just outright stole bits of. This one felt very new, which was fantastic. In my opinion, it was great to see that. No One Gets Out Alive is a good mystery, a good thriller, and a good horror. It juggles these three very well. You will need to be engaged in it. You know, it's not a background movie. You should be hooked in if you're watching this. If you've got the time, you're not going to go wrong with No One Gets Out Alive. You know, if you're coming into this for a slasher or jump scare galore sort of movie, you'll need to look elsewhere. If you're wanting a good horror, something to keep you on the edge of your seat, make time for No One Gets Out Alive. And the acting in this was great. Amber was really good. You felt that she was a victim in more than one way, a victim of her own circumstance in life. You felt she both regretted and was optimistic about what her choices were coming over here. When things didn't go to plan, you really felt for her and were upset for her as well. Not only Amber, all the supporting cast done their jobs really well. Particularly Red of the boarding house, you know, he's the landlord kind of handyman. I thought he done a really good job of his own conflict that he was dealing with. That was just some of my thoughts on No One Gets Out Alive. Have you seen it? And do we agree or disagree? Let me know down below. And look, whilst you're there, please consider liking, subscribing. That would be fantastic. But thank you very much for watching.